Types of the variations. There are two major types of the variations. One is called as discontinuous variation and second one is called as continuous variation. We will describe one by one both of these. What is discontinuous variation? Discontinuous variation is entirely controlled by the genetic makeup or by the genes of that species or that organism. These kind of the variations, they cannot be changed by external factors. The example would be the blood group, color blindness and the dwarfism in humans. So these are the variations which are purely controlled by the genetic makeup or by the genes of that organism or of that species. They cannot be controlled by the environmental factors. If we see the graph for discontinuous variation, because this kind of variation is purely controlled by the genes, so there is not we cannot see a smooth curve in this kind of the variation. Here is the example of the blood group in a particular population where we can see that the AB blood group is 3%, while blood group A is 42%, blood group O is 46%, while the blood group B is 9%. So if we try to make a smooth curve or try to fit it into a smooth curve cannot be get by the discontinuous variations, because these kind of variations, they are purely controlled by the genetic makeup. While in case of continuous variation described a situation in which there are many intermediates between two extremes. Like we see the shade of the colors, we see on one hand black and on the other hand there is a golden color. But there are many different shades between these two extremes. On one hand black, while on the other hand there is brown color. Here is the example of hair color, that is example of the continuous variation. We can see different children, they have different hair colors. Some of them they have a red color, some of them they have black color hairs, while some of them they have curly, and there are some intermediates between black color as well as brown color. In case of continuous variation, there are multiple genes. Those multiple genes control the traits. Like in case of the example of human hair color, there are 4 different genes. These genes, they control the variation in the color of the humans. Continuous variation occur when this type of the variation is controlled by genes as well as by the environment. So they jointly control the continuous variation. Like the example is of the height. If we try to make the graph of the continuous variation, we can fit all the figures into a smooth curve, because there are several intermediates between two extremes. This is one extreme, this is second extreme. If we try to make a graph, we can make a smooth graph, because there are many intermediates between two extremes. The comparison between two types: on one hand there is a continuous variation, while on the other hand there is a discontinuous variation. In case of continuous variation, there is no distinct categories, while in case of discontinuous variation there are distinct categories. Continuous variation can be quantitative in nature, while discontinuous variation can be qualitative in nature. Continuous variation is controlled by a lot of genes, while discontinuous variation is controlled by fewer number of genes. Continuous variation is strongly influenced by the environment, while discontinuous variation is not affected by the environment. If we conclude the types of variation, variation can be of two types: continuous variation and discontinuous variation.